There's a stock issue word for this. If you learn the stock issue word first, then you are now a debate robot. If you learn the concept first and then learn the stock issue word to go with it, you're a debate thinker. Be a debate thinker. The stock issue word for this is inherency. What's inherent in the status quo? What's not? I will make a couple of observations that are really important. The first one is, when discussing the status quo, there, that was A. When discussing the status quo, we are dry, boring, and non-emotional, which all are synonyms for the same thing. This is huge. Have you ever been in a discussion where by stating a fact, you turn someone else's emotional buttons on? And it's like that's not even the discussion you were trying to have. You were just stating a fact. So if you say, we have 37 sanctions on Sudan. I don't know if we have any sanctions on Sudan. I'm sure we do, but that's boring. If you say that that's starving people in Sudan, that's emotional. We have to, as debaters, discriminate between those two things. That we have 37 sanctions is boring and dry. What it does to people is emotional and matters. We separate that because, as debaters, we don't want to have a debate disagreeing about what's going on. That throws the entire rest of our debate off. We want both teams to just agree on what the status quo is so that we can debate on what it could be. That's where the substance of debate lives. So if you come up here and say there are 37 sanctions and there are in actuality 35 and we're planning to bring that down to 2 within the next 5 years, that's all an inherency debate. That's debating that you're wrong about the facts. Then your whole interpretation about sanctions and all these things doesn't come into it. You don't want that debate. You want to always be right about the facts. Never lose on inherency. That's kind of a silly thing to lose on. You never really want to have much debate about inherency. What's bad is when debaters confuse statement of fact with interpretation of those facts. Because then, when the debater comes and says, sanctions don't kill people, if you haven't separated that there are sanctions of X, Y, and Z variety from what they do, now you are, when the other debaters cast doubt on you, they cast doubt on the whole package. And then it becomes really confusing and bothersome. We want to think clearly, and so on the one hand, there are facts, and then on the other hand, they lead to effects. What do we call effects? Impacts. Good. Impacts is a subpoint, I'll break it out in a second, of a typical name we have for this. Harms is a common name for this. Very common name. Most common name. Significance is the issue word for this. We're not done with significance, though. But yes. What? All of these combine to be reasons to change. So they have the net effect of being a reason to change.
Values?
Nope. And? Obviously, there are disadvantages to the status quo, but there are also advantages to the status quo. Advantages and disadvantages. Very helpful to think in terms of these words, in my opinion. Why? Because they're normal English words. When you say, and we, the affirmative team, are now debating in observation 3 the significance, you said 0. When you say, in our second point, we're going to compare the disadvantages of the status quo to the advantages that are possible, you said something. Or when you say, in our second point, let's look at all the disadvantages of these sanctions. You're saying something. I know, value debaters, hang with me. This is important for you to know because it connects to value debate in a second. Disadvantages and advantages. What's a disadvantage to the status quo? It's a harm. I far prefer the word disadvantage. Why do I far prefer the word disadvantage? I'll get your question in just a second, unless you're answering my question.
Mass warrantless surveillance by the U.S. government on American citizens.
That's going to be, let's unpack that. That is going to be the disadvantage, right? Here's what's interesting about that. On the one hand, you have to prove that there is mass. It has the properties of mass, lots of it, that it is warrantless, and that it is surveillance. We have mass warrantless surveillance. That's not bad, necessarily. And that is the point here. If you say a phrase like, fact one, there is mass warrantless surveillance. Because of, again, the equivocation on the word warrantless, where warrantless sounds like with no reason, but in the legal system it means a judge signed a piece of paper. It does or doesn't mean warrantless, depending on what you're talking about. That's an emotional statement by some interpretations, and it's not by others. That's the fact. What's wrong with mass warrantless surveillance? It invades privacy of people. It sets the government up with all the information. Information is power. It lacks legal basis, and legality is our society's approval method. So it is unapproved by society. In fact, it is disapproved by society because our legal system places the obligation on the government to comply with law, not to go beyond law unless we have authorized it to do so. Good. See how these connect. One's boring and dry. You don't want to debate this. If you are making this case, you want the debate to focus around privacy issues and what happens to the government. It would be very frustrating for you to spend the rest of the debate arguing about whether or not you could have said the word mass, or whether it actually is warrantless, or whether it is surveillance. So it would be far better for you to rephrase this as fact one. Drone. I guess we could go with surveillance. Probably not the rest of it. Surveillance program. There is a drone surveillance program. The facts that you would say is X% of the time, there are no warrants. But you don't cast judgment on that yet. You just say it. There are no warrants this % of the time. Y% of the time, there was no arrest. Again, you don't cast judgment on it. You're just saying facts. Distinguishing those two really, really helps debate. If I were to debate, let's say, Professor Jack Binney, who works here, was the former director of counterintelligence at the FBI. He's now a professor here. If I were to walk in the room and say, I want to have like a discussion with him, and I started with, I want to talk about the mass surveillance warrantless drone program, he said, whoa, 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 stop right there. And we would discuss that instead of discussing this, which is where we want to win the debate, because this is where all the emotional power lives. And that's why this serves you to do it, is you want judges to vote for you because of the emotional, motivational aspects, which are all living here. Not because of the dry, boring facts, which all live here. Yes?
When you talk about not confusing value debate with policy, you're saying don't confuse it with the stock issue of inherency, separating the emotion from inherency and significance.
Yes.
The fact that you can't have any sort of emotional attachment inside of the value policy discrepancy.
Yes. Yay! Value debate lives in this zone. Thank you. Value debate is only about determining significance. Where's blue? I need blue or red or something. This is all value debate. And that is the sum total of value debate. Value debate compares things. Compares advantages and disadvantages of different things. You have to have a perspective to do that. If privacy is our value, now we're in a policy land again, and privacy is violated, then you should win as affirmative team if you can unviolate privacy somehow. But if security is the value, this doesn't matter, as long as the drone program makes us some percentage more secure. This is why policy debaters have to learn value debate, because the value debate determines the drone surveillance program's worth. Okay, value. Let's fill out the bottom half. What is the future status quo? This is literally a repeat of the top. Yeah, what creates it? The plan. Yeah, I'm sure everybody was saying that. The plan. The plan is the future status quo. Let me stop and make a quick point about the map. The point of the map is to have a visual reference to make cool deductions like she just made a second ago about value debate. I am not going to make every deduction possible. I don't think I even could. By learning the map, you start to make cool deductions like this. If, when I'm affirmative, I am proposing a new status quo, and these are the arguments I use, and I understand the full types of arguments that I use. When I am negative, am I not also proposing a plan that has advantages and disadvantages and harms, which are disadvantages to the affirmative plan? Yes. Mental hack, yes. So one of the ways that that's helpful is in terminology. So if you are coming up to speed on debate and you find link, impact, and uniqueness to be meaningful terms that help you understand causality, new debaters, don't worry about that, then you think in terms of disadvantage on negative. Why not think in terms of link, uniqueness, and impact when discussing harms? No reason not to. It's the exact same thing. What's funny to me, and why we correct it with the unified theory of debate, is the way debate is often taught today. You learn one set of terms around inherency, and you learn about existential, attitudinal, and what's the other one? Structural inherency when discussing affirmative, and then you learn about link, uniqueness, and impacts and turns on negative, but both discuss the exact same thing. The substance is the same.